Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and the big moment has arrived. Yes, Eugene Ormandy. The Columbia Legacy, the Philadelphia Orchestra, mostly, not exclusively, 120 mono discs. And I have to say, first of all, that the way Sony does these sets really is a model for how it should be done. You get sturdy cardboard. You get a beautiful insulated box. Here's a box with the CDs in here. Original jacket covers. You can read sideways what's on them. All of the volumes numbered consecutively. A beautiful ribbon here with which you can take out the magnificent book. I mean, it's a book, a real book. And frankly, at the price, whatever it is, $300 maybe, I don't know. It's a steal. It's a steal. How else are you going to get this? It's a real collector's item, and you're really getting something built to last. Good job, Sony. In fact, let us give some credit to the people who put this together. The producer was Robert Russ. They've done such fabulous work here. They really have. The booklet editor is Jochen Rudolph. Is it Rudolph? Yes, it looks like Rudolph or Rudolph. I can't tell because I can't see very well. And then, let's see, tape research. Matt Fivash. Fabulous. I mean, amazing amount of work done there. Document research. Tom Tierney. Analog to digital image conversion. Che Williams. Production manager Miriam Rodriguez. You have all done superb work. You deserve a giant shout out from music lovers everywhere. I mean, I'm hoping that if we all love you, you will also do the Ormandy Stereo Columbia Legacy. Please do the Ormandy Stereo Columbia Legacy. Anyway, there is a comment here in the back of the book that I think I should read to you because it really explains what's going on here from Robert Russ, from the producer. To cover the Philadelphia Orchestra's history of mono recordings on Columbia Masterworks, we decided to also include recordings conducted by Alexandra Hillsberg, Eugene Ormandy's associate conductor, as well as recordings by the guest conductors, Sir Thomas Beecham, Saul Caston, Charles O'Connell, Harl McDonald, Andre Kostelanetz, Virgil Thompson, and Bruno Walter. Not shabby, is it? The listener can also enjoy recordings by the Philadelphia Pops Orchestra, as well as some made by the so-called Columbia Symphony Orchestra in sessions in which its players consisted mainly of Philadelphians. In a few instances, we have also included repertoire recorded by other conductors, such as Dmitri Mitropoulos, Serge Koussevitzky, George Sell, or Fritz Reiner, with their orchestras, when we felt the listener might find enjoyment in hearing the complete repertoire of an original LP release. Well, isn't that a smart and considerate thing to do? And how rare. Finally, it was common, especially in the early days of lacquer disc and tape recording, to make musical cuts of a few bars up to whole segments, mainly to make the repertoire fit on a disc side. This present edition of 120 remastered CDs has been entirely created and assembled during the worldwide COVID-19 virus pandemic of 2020. Owing to the closures of archives and travel restrictions, we have been limited in our on-site research for further 78 RPM covers and historic photos or facsimiles. Well, let me tell you, they have done one hell of a job, and you'd never know that they were limited because this booklet contains, as you see me going through it, maybe better this way. Yes, look at this. You get covers, you get photos, you get historical archive stuff. I mean, it's just a joy to thumb through. And the book has two different ways of going through everything in here. I mean, it's extraordinary how well documented all of this is. You get a disc-by-disc list of everything that's on the disc individually, so that's more than 120 pages there. And then you get the list of the albums, the Series M 78 RPM albums, and how they all shook out. And then you get you'll see the M series, the X series, how many discs were in a set, all of this stuff about the history of how these things were originally produced and released and sold. Then you get the 45 RPM single microgrooves, 45 RPM 7-inch extended play microgrooves. It's just fabulously well documented, painstakingly documented. And that in itself is a real labor of love. Beautifully, beautifully done, making this a true collector's item, as I've said before. Now, there were a couple of ways that I could go about talking about these things. I could go through the index of composers and just talk about the works, with some remarks about the performances, or I could do it disc by disc and take forever. And guess which way I decided to go? Yesterday, when I was trashing Richard Osborne's stupid gramophone review of this set, I was just going to go through the composer list. But now I figure, Ormandy deserves better. If you don't have the time, spend a couple days at this. If my voice and my way of doing this is sort of like a performing art vocal version of Satie's Vexations, then I apologize. You don't have to watch it. But for those of you who really care and who are really curious, and since I spent a marathon evening getting caught up on all the stuff I hadn't heard before so that I might be able to say something halfway intelligent about it, we're going disc by disc, all 120 of them. So this is going to take forever. And I'm sorry about that, but I think it really is worth it. I think the music making and the time and attention and work that went into this are of such quality that it deserves no less than as much time as we have to give it. So I am putting the beautiful cover over here on top of the extremely nice sturdy box, taking the book, and get ready. First, let me just say, the remastering really is super. Obviously, these mono recordings, especially the ones from the 40s, have extremely variable sonics, but everything is listenable, truly listenable. I mean, there's no problem in enjoying and hearing what's going on in the performances. So, and that's all I'm going to say about the sound, unless there's some point at which I have to mention it. So let's just get to the, here we go. I'm getting through the initial essay, Creator and Creation. You may recall yesterday I took umbrage at Osborne's really foolish comment that Ormandy was not responsible for the Philadelphia sound, for the Philadelphia orchestra, that he inherited a great orchestra. And I made a point. The point was that orchestras, first of all, do not maintain themselves. And second of all, that Ormandy did more than just maintain it. For his entire tenure, possibly the longest of any music director in history, in the United States anyway, just generally speaking, the Philadelphia Orchestra was among the world's great orchestras, and it never for a moment dropped out of that slot. Even when Ormandy was really old and in decline, it never happened. And that was Ormandy. He deserves full credit for it. But he also deserves credit for being an interpreter of genius. Yes, genius, a wonderful interpreter. And the only reason we don't know about it is because we haven't had an opportunity to appraise his achievement as a whole. This is not a whole. This is the beginning of his achievement. Really, it's almost the middle because his Minneapolis recordings came first. But let's just take this as the beginning of an extraordinary legacy and see where his strengths and weaknesses really were. The answer may surprise you. All right, disc 1. You ready? You get Lalo, Symphony Espagnole with Nathan Milstein. Yeah, this is the cut version of the Symphony Espagnole, by the way. It's missing a movement, which thank God. I hate that piece. Never mind. It's very well done, and other people love it, so who cares what I think. The Polovtsian dances, extremely well recorded. They sound terrific. And this was was released in 1945. And boy, does it sound good for its period. And then some short things. One of the Ancient Airs and Dances by Respighi, just one of them. And the Gluck, Dance of the Blessed Spirits, and Suppé's Poet and Peasant Overture. And that is disc 1. And it's self-recommending, obviously. Disc 2. Now, here we get music by some American guys, and these are interesting. Harl McDonald, who was the Philadelphia's orchestra manager. You get My Country at War, the symphonic suite. And this is, brand new, obviously, because the war he's referring to is World War II, and it had just ended when this was made. And then we get Paul White's Sea Chanty for harp and solo strings. It's a beautiful piece that's perfect for the Philly people, with Edna Phillips, the great harpist. Howard Hanson's Serenade for flute, harp, and string orchestra, and Kent Kennon's Night Soliloquy for flute, piano, and string orchestra. A lovely selection of American, let's face it, ephemera, not the most important thing in the world, but again, and I have to go back to this because it was so irritating to me. Osborne talked about Ormandy's devotion to some minor American composers. Let me tell you something about those minor American composers. I'm not making any claims for them, that they were greater than they really were, but we see today entire record labels devoted to nothing but those minor composers. They just aren't American. Think of Lyrita. Lyrita is nothing but minor British composers that nobody cares about. And Chandos, holy cow! Minor British composers that nobody cares about. And labels like Biss and Ondine with the strange Finnish people and the weird Swedish people and the Estonian people. The entire modern classical record industry, the independent labels principally, made their fortune doing minor composers that nobody cares about. The Hyperion Romantic Piano Concerto series is 80 volumes of ephemera that nobody cares about. Whether it's American or not American, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference. All that matters is whether it's decent music, whether it's fun to listen to, whether record collectors like us will collect and love it. And we do, and we will. And so why would you piss on Ormandy for doing the same thing? Or Columbia or a major label for making recordings of unknown, unusual, neglected, or ephemeral composers who happen to be contemporary composers? Beats me. It's just hypocrisy. Plain and simple hypocrisy. So let's get that out of the way right away. Immediately right away. And let us move on to disc number 3. Yes. Beethoven 7th and Brahms 4. And let me tell you something. There's nothing wrong with these performances. The Beethoven 7th is lively and vigorous and nicely transparent and beautifully played. And the Brahms 4 it's just exciting as hell. Ormandy, let's get this right out of the way, was a terrific Brahms conductor. He really was. His Brahms symphonies are gorgeous, all of them. And there's a complete Brahms cycle in this set, and it's very, very good. These are, youthful Brahms for Ormandy. He slowed down a little in stereo. He did, actually giving lie to the idea that he just inherited an orchestra which never changed. Because as time went on, the playing definitely changed. It got richer in texture. It got a little slower in tempo. Some people think it got less exciting. Maybe it did. But the point is, it definitely changed over it definitely changed over time. No question about it. And of course, in Brahms, you could always count on Ormandy to do a little orchestrational touch-up, like at the beginning of the Passacaglia finale, where the trumpets are really rather prominent, especially the trumpets that Brahms didn't write to be playing there, but Ormandy didn't care. And that is what the kind of conductor he was. He was like Tchaikovsky. He was an interventionist. He tinkered with orchestration all the time. That was his way, in a sense, of interpreting the music. And he had every right to do it as a conductor, and you may like it or you may love it, but you cannot say that as a conductor he lacked character. You just have to define what that character was. And where you heard it was in matters of sonority, matters of texture, also in details in the finesse of his phrasing and articulation, over which he spent enormous amount of time and effort. These are things that you don't really know very well unless you know the music very well. And it's much easier to just listen to a guy who whips up the tempos or diddles around with something and plays it very fast or very slow and say, interpretation. But there's a lot of interpretation that goes into these performances that you only begin to realize once you know them well, and once you know other performances well. It takes a little bit more musical knowledge sometimes to appreciate all of the things that Ormandy does, but he does do them. And some of them are absolute genius. Anyway, it's a very exciting Brahms 4. Then we get Brahms, Piano Concerto number 2 with Rudolf Serkin, with the Schumann Piano Concerto with Rudolf Serkin. Now, these I don't need to talk about. They're wonderful performances by and large. They're all in the Serkin box, which we reviewed before and we've talked about before. And so most of these concerto performances speak for themselves. Schumann, the Schumann concerto particularly was a circuit specialty, and it's a marvelous performance. He always did a beautiful job with it. Then we get the Brahms violin concerto with Joseph Segetti. This just came out in the Segetti box, and so we've heard that too. Now, Segetti was supposedly approaching the end of his career. Well, really, that happened a few years after this Brahms concerto. And he was never a violinist who had a very succulent tone, and he doesn't here. But it's a beautiful, beautiful performance of the Brahms with a wonderful finale, particularly, that's paced and phrased with absolute genius. It's marvelous. So that was great. Then we get, some shorties. Glier, Russian Sailor's Dance. This is disc 6 already. Fernandez Batuque. Oh, I love that thing. This is conducted by Saul Kasten, by the way. And then Smetana, the Dance of the Comedians from The Bartered Bride, Dvorak's Slavonic Dance in E minor, the Brahms Hungarian Dance number 5, and some Johann Strauss, Wine, Women, and Song, and Debussy's La Demoiselle Élue, a fabulous performance with Bidou Sayao in the solo soprano role as the Élue one. The Demoiselle Élue. It's a beautiful performance and such a lovely work. And that's a really interesting repertoire selection that perhaps belies the reputation Ormandy had for being just a sort of, late romantic Tchaikovsky guy and Rachmaninoff. No, he did quite a bit. Already he's done quite a bit. Marvelous stuff. All right, Debussy, the hour disc 7, Debussy Nocturnes, just the first 2, because people did not tend to do Sirène back in the old days. For some reason, you needed a women's chorus. And The Pines of Rome. That's disc 7. It's a short disc. Some of these are quite short, 31, 33 minutes in this case. Others are quite generous, as you saw the Brahms Second Concerto with the Schumann. So it all balances out in the end. I have to say something, though, about Ormandy and Respighi. This was the kind of thing he was supposed to do incredibly well. A big orchestral blockbuster. I never liked his Respighi tone poems. I think that they tend to be somewhat underplayed. I think he redid the percussion parts to their disadvantage in places. But the best one he always did was Fountains, which isn't in this box. But the Pines, he never quite got. Partly because he never had the sonics that the works needed. I don't know what they would have sounded like if he'd really had splendid demonstration quality sonics, but Toscanini did them in mono after all, and they're blockbusters. Right around this time, fabulous. And Ormandy's not a patch on Toscanini in this music, quite frankly. And remember, Toscanini did Festa Romana with Philadelphia in the 40s as well, and it's so much better than Ormandy's. We'll get to that in a minute. Dvorak, Cello Concerto with Piatigorsky, fabulous, absolutely fabulous, along with the Bruch Kol Nidre as an encore. A beautiful, beautiful disc, major artists, what's not to love. Disc number 9, see how fast we're moving. The New World Symphony. Ormandy always did a terrific New World Symphony. This is the one where he adds the cymbal crashes in the finale. Yay! He took them out later. But here we get to hear him dude up the percussion parts a little bit. Tchaikovsky actually did that too. Tchaikovsky added a tam-tam. I don't think Ormandy goes that far. At least I couldn't hear it if he did. And then we have, let's see what else. Franck, Symphony in D minor. Oh, Ormandy did a great Franck Symphony in D minor, and there are 2 of them in this box, just as there are 2 of the Dvoraks in this box. And it's a beautiful performance. It's nice and warm and rich and yummy and fun to listen to. Disc 11, Strauss. Oh, this is fun. Der Rosenkavalier Suites, the Prelude and Waltzes and other things. That is really, really good to hear. That's an Ormandy specialty. Then Death and Transfiguration, not a performance that thrilled me particularly. I don't think it's transfigured enough. I think it's a little bit soft-edged. Just run-of-the-mill, in my opinion. And then a wonderful Dance of the Seven Veils. Ormandy always did a great Dance of the Seven Veils. It's sexy, but also really wild at the end. It gets very exciting. Okay, CD 12. Tchaikovsky, Symphony number 4, and the Serenade for Strings. Now, you get 2 serenades for strings in here. It was an Ormandy and Philadelphia specialty, and it sounds just great. The Tchaik 4, Ormandy's Tchaik 4 always came in for a little bit of guff because his finale wasn't like Mravinsky. It's not this really fast, boiling, exciting thing. He's much more deliberate. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but more to the point, there is a moment in the first movement that Ormandy did, which I think is textbook how to do it. And he does it exactly as Tchaikovsky wrote it. And I'm talking about the approach to the recapitulation, where so many conductors today, modern ones particularly, add this huge timpani crescendo leading up to the return of the opening theme, that wailing da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-dum. Tchaikovsky didn't write any of that. He wanted the strings to come flying in, fortissimo, like a shock, like a bolt of lightning. And then the timpani come in, right? Ormandy does it the way Tchaikovsky wrote it. But the point is that is a climax that is carried by the violins. And if you can get your violins to fling themselves at that opening melody, it has more power and more gut-wrenching shock value than any amount of timpani crescendos that you add incorrectly before the passage starts. And Ormandy always got it right. Always. Because he had his violins just wail. And it's fantastic. All right. Beethoven, Fourth Piano Concerto, and the Ravel Concerto with the left hand with Casa de Sous. That's in the Casa de Sous box, obviously. And it's quite splendid, beautiful performances with a surprisingly good Ravel left-hand concerto. It really is. I mean, very well played by everybody. And then let's see, what else have we got here? Oh, Brahms' Third Symphony, the Haydn Variations, and Liszt Les Preludes. Now, as I said before, Ormandy was a great Brahms conductor, unquestionably a great Brahms conductor. He never screwed up the third. And that is such a significant fact, because even the great Brahms conductors, they usually blow the Third Symphony. Ormandy never did. And this is a beautiful performance of the third. It's fresh and lively in the first movement. The inner movements are really well differentiated. And the third movement with the cello solo, everyone would think it'd be very slow and very soggy. It's just the opposite. It's lean and urgent and passionate. And the finale is exciting and propulsive. It's just wonderful. And the Haydn variations have amazing differentiation from one variation to the next. It's just terrific to hear how much character he packs into each one. Each one is like a little mini tone poem. And Les Preludes, oh, they're just in home territory. I mean, Ormandy and Les Preludes is like, chocolate and peanut butter. I mean, they just go together so well. It's wonderful. Now we're on disc 15, Scheherazade. They always did a great Scheherazade. Always did a wonderful Scheherazade, and these two, there are two of them in here, are splendid. You get your 40s Scheherazade and your 50s Scheherazade, and they are both terrific. They really are. Wonderful playing and perfect pacing. Ormandy just got Scheherazade. Tchaikovsky, Piano Concerto No. 1, with a very cut Gershwin Rhapsody in Blue, the famous Oscar Levant Rhapsody in Blue. And the Tchaikovsky one, it's a nice, big, romantic, Tchaikovsky of no particular pianistic distinction, but I mean, it's well played. And of course, Ormandy's accompaniments are fine, and so it's a historical curiosity. The Gershwin, of course, is a little bit more than that, but heck, when you could have Earl Wild play it, why would you listen to anybody else? You know what I mean? Okay, disc 17. Oh my goodness, we get the 9th. Yes, we get it, and the soloists here. Well, I mean, let's see, Stella Roman and Enid Santho and Frederick Jägel and Nicola Moscona. Okay, well, people knew who he was, with the Westminster Choir. It happens to be a very solid performance, but not a great one, and there's no shame in that. Very nicely paced. Ormandy always shaped things well. He always did. And you got to give him credit for that, because it's never boring, never for a minute. It's really, in fact, it has a lot of very exciting passages. It's just that the sound is a little mono, and what can I tell you? Not one of my faves, but it's good. It's good. I mean, it doesn't deserve to be spat upon. Disc 18, Sibelius, Symphony No. 2. First class. Ormandy was one of the great Sibelius conductors. Everybody knows it. After all, look, he got his picture taken with Sibelius, so that proves it, right? That proves everything we need to know. It's really a good Sibelius second with a finale that's not boring. In fact, none of it's boring. It's marvelous. The second movement's really good too, nice and dark and gnarly. Oh, it's just really, really good. And so, I mean, all the Sibelius in here is going to turn out to be quite splendid. CD 19, Grieg, Peer Gynt Suite Number 1. That will come back later, I believe. And Liszt, Hungarian Rhapsody in F minor and in C sharp minor. And this is all just, vintage Ormandy stuff, fun to listen to, really well played. The sound is pretty good too. It's just good. Just very, very good. And then we have, CD 20. It's a Johann Strauss thing. You get Fledermaus Overture, the Gypsy Ballad Overture, or the beautiful Blue Danube, and the Tales of the Vienna Woods with the Philadelphia Pops under Ormandy. Also, the Ruslan and Ludmila Overture by Glinka, Weber's Invitation to the Dance in Ormandy's own orchestration, which is quite good, actually, and very effective. The Die Freischütz Overture, it's very exciting, and the Weinberger Schwande der Dudelsackpfeifer, Polka and Fugue, which I played in band about 1 billion times. Oh, it drove me crazy. Anyway, they do it better than we did it, and that's what matters. Now, Ormandy Strauss, some people have found it curiously, not schmaltzy enough. It tends to be more rhythmically urgent and kind of direct. And I think that's fascinating because it just goes to show you once again, whether you like it or don't like it is another question, because it's not echt Viennese. I mean, everybody claims to know what echt Viennese is when they listen to Strauss. I have no idea what they're talking about, frankly, and I don't really care. It's like all the Shakespeare people thinking all the British literary people thinking that they're like, English language literary experts because Shakespeare was English. And it's the same crap. Whenever you find an opera libretto like Arrigo Boito's, Otello libretto, and says, well, it's not close to Shakespeare, blah, 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 blah. Like you really know. Like you really know anything about literary criticism. And it's the same thing with Strauss waltzes. Everybody thinks they know how a Strauss waltz is supposed to go. All right, tell Ormandy's wrong. I don't care. Go ahead, tell him. See what he has to say. I have a feeling what he'd say. All right, Prokofiev, Scythian Suite. Rather deliberate tempi, which make it awfully clear textually. It's kind of interesting texturally. You actually hear an awful lot of what's going on in it. And then Respighi Festa Romana. Again, I'm not a fan of the Respighi Festa with Ormandy, especially because in the last movement, in the big ha-ha-hoo-hoo, he makes a ridiculous, stupid cut. Maybe this was to accommodate the thing on 78s. I don't know. All I know is that wonderful tune that comes back at the very end is missing. You know the tune, the one that after it's going yum bum ba da 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 ba da 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 da. It was doing that, right? And the percussion's going like that. It's missing. It just goes straight to the end. It just goes dump it up. Oh, no, not good. Okay, Ormandy's Bach. Now here's another one of those things where Osborne got really bitchy. He was quoting a 1949 review by Alec Robertson. It was like, why the angels are weeping at this Bach. Well, the fact is, most of this is Ormandy. Some of it is Ormandy, let's put it that way, Ormandy's own orchestration. But it's also lots of other people. I mean, it's Lucien Caillé, and it's let's see, and he does his water music thing, and he does a lovely Corelli suite for string orchestra. It's really, really charming, and a Handel concerto for trumpets and horns, arranged by Ormandy. These are Ormandy's arrangements, but not only Ormandy. There's like a bunch of other people's. And later, he's going to do the Elgar Fantasia and Fugue in C minor. And it's not just Ormandy. That's the point. This is the way Bach was done back then. There was Tchaikovsky, there was Respighi. I talked about there's Schoenberg, who did the St. Anne Chorale and Prelude and Fugue. I mean, everybody orchestrated Bach, and it was all equally tacky. So if you like any of it, just enjoy it. It's wonderful. It's just what Raff did it. I mean, come on. Just have some fun. I did. You will too. It really is fun. It's beautifully played. Marvelous. Oh. Hindemith, Nobilissima Visione, Suite, and the Symphonic Metamorphoses on Themes by Weber. This is disc 23. This is the mono George Zell version of the Symphonic Metamorphoses, which is wonderful to have, because we all know his stereo one. Of course, the mono one is in the Zell box, but it's in this box too, and who's complaining? And the Nobilissima Visione is great. Now, Ormandy was a great Hindemith conductor. No one gets any cred for being a great Hindemith conductor, but these guys really played the music, and Hindemith must have been very happy, because boy, they do it so much better than that cranky, rhythmically constipated German orchestra versions of this same music. It all sounds so lively and flexible and colorful and supple. It's just everything you don't think about Hindemith being. It's marvelous. Disc 24. Bartók, Concerto for Piano and Orchestra No. 3, and Nikolai Miaskovsky, Symphony No. 21. Very nicely done. The Bartók was a premiere. It's with Georgy Shandor, and it sounds like the Bartók Third Concerto. It's okay. I mean, there are better ones that were done later, no question about it, but it's a premiere recording, and as such, at least historically interesting. And the Miaskovsky is just another example of Ormandy having some fairly enterprising programming at a time when you couldn't hear this music any other way. Certainly not this well played, certainly not in this good sound. I mean, maybe something from Melodia slid under the Iron Curtain or something like that, but, never mind. All right, CD 25, Prokofiev, Nevsky, Alexander Nevsky. Now, Alexander Nevsky is a film score, as you know. They do it in English, which, I mean, it doesn't matter because most of the time you can't understand what anyone says anyway. And the Latin stuff in the Battle on the Ice is still in Latin. It's still, peregrinus expectavi pedes meos in cymbalis, So that's all what it's supposed to be. And it's exciting and it's well played. It sounds pretty good. It doesn't sound as good as it has to because, I mean, it's a film score. It should be gaudier and more impactful. But given what they were dealing with, mono and whatever, it's really a good performance. And you've got Jenny Torell doing the lament, which is a considerable bonus. So that was fun to hear. I mean, it wasn't great. And you also get on the same disc, the Prokofiev Classical Symphony at really scorching tempos. Whoa! This was also an Ormandy specialty. They made my reference version of the Classical Symphony, their stereo one. This one is considerably quicker and very exciting. And you can hear the flutes hanging on for dear life in the finale. And the Rimsky-Korsakov Russian Easter Overture. I always love to listen to the Russian Easter Overture to see where the cut's going to happen. But usually it's toward the end. And in this particular case, it's just at the very end, just a couple of bars. The rest of it's all there. And it still gets cut that way. This is a piece that no one leaves alone, which is a shame because what Rimsky wrote is great. He wanted to have a really long, drawn-out peroration. So it's da 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 ba 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 da 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 ba bam 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 bo do 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 da bam da da. Usually, some of that last big chord gets chopped out, and Ormandy chops out a couple bars of it. You won't miss it. Let's see. Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto with Isaac Stern. The young Isaac Stern. Very good performance. The Sansol Cello Concerto with Piatigorsky and Alexander Hilsberg conducting, which is awfully nice to have for Piatigorsky, Philly, and Hilsberg. Tchaikovsky's early stuff he was an exciting violinist then too. He didn't always remain that way, but he was then, and so that's nice to have. Oh, and this is fun. CD 27. This is Virgil Thomson, the Louisiana Story music conducted by Ormandy, and then 5 portraits conducted by Virgil Thomson. That's quite something. That's really something. You hear the composer do his own stuff, and hear Ormandy do Louisiana Story quite splendidly. And then you get Berg, excerpts from Wozzeck. Isn't that interesting? You get the interlude, military music, and cradle song, Marie's Bible reading, and the death of Wozzeck, and the whole final scene with Gertrude Aribula soprano, and it's wonderful to have. Who else was doing that then? Wozzeck excerpts? Come on, folks. For people who said Ormandy and the orchestra were only good doing little bits of pop music and fluffy things, nothing is less fluffy than Wozzeck, right? except maybe Lulu. Okay, and then Harl MacDonald's Children's Symphony, and Max Brand's The Wonderful One-Hoss Shay, after the poem by Oliver Wendell Holmes. All of this is disc 27. That is quite a disc, is it not? Let us recapitulate just for fun. Virgil Thomson, Alban Berg, Harl MacDonald, and Max Brand. Wow. It's a well-filled and generous disc of quite the selection of doodads, isn't it? All right, disc 28. Oh, this is something special. You get Haydn the Clock Symphony with Ormandy, and Symphony number 88 with Ormandy, and the Oxford Symphony with the Cleveland Orchestra and Zell. This disc is fascinating. In fact, I think it's one of the most fascinating discs in the box, and I'll tell you why. Because Ormandy had no reputation as a conductor of classical repertoire. And let me tell you something, his Haydn is fantastic. It's really great. Zell, on the other hand, had a sterling reputation as a Haydn conductor. And let me tell you, his Haydn is great. But more to the point, it's not so different from Ormandy's that you would be saying to yourself, one guy knows how to do Haydn, the other guy doesn't. They're both really compelling, and that is fascinating, and it tells us something. And I'll have a point to mention this a little bit down the line, too, in another one. There is much more Haydn in this box than Mozart, and it just goes to show us that part of the credit goes to these conductors who just did great Haydn, but the other thing is that Haydn was a modern composer. Forget what the period instrument people are telling us. His music sounds best when played by a big modern 20th century symphony orchestra. I don't know why that's true. Someday I'll write a paper about it, but I'm telling you, take my word for it. Big band Haydn, no matter what the original forces were, sounds great. And it's something about the way Haydn wrote for instruments that was so far in advance of what he actually had. His music sounds marvelous on a full orchestra. And it does with Zell, and it does with Ormandy. And I just think that's so cool. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. Okay, disc number 29. Ravel, Rhapsody Espagnole, Kodai, Harianos. Good stuff. You know they're going to do it well. They do it well. The final movement of the Ravel, the Ravel, the Fiera, whatever that thing is called, it has such a pinpoint, exciting opening. You know that big rhythm that takes over the end actually has its origins right there, and I never noticed that before. Usually you just hear sort of like fleep, 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 but not here. Boy, the precision and the clarity are really quite striking. The Harianos is a fun performance, and they found a cymbalum. I made sure to check because, you couldn't always count on getting a cymbalum in the 40s and 50s, but Ormandy made sure he had a cymbalum to play there. And then we get, let's see, disc 30. We're already at disc 30. Look, we're 25% done. Can you imagine? And we're only 38 minutes into this. Oh, we have so much more time. Oh, God. Here we go. Daphnis and Chloe, suite number 1 with chorus. Suite number 2 without chorus. And Schoenberg's Verklärte Nacht. A beautiful, as you might expect, Verklärte Nacht. First rate. And that's a beautiful disc, frankly. Absolutely beautiful disc. All this stuff on it is just wonderfully played. And exciting. CD 31. Here we go. Debussy. Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. Dukas, Sorcerer's Apprentice. A very exciting Sorcerer's Apprentice. Let me tell you. They whip up quite a storm at the climax of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Honegger's Concertino for piano and orchestra with Oscar Levant, the Columbia Symphony, and Fritz Reiner doing that one. And then Sibelius's Finlandia, an Ormandy specialty. The Swan of Twinella. And, the Swan of Salmonella, as we used to call it, back in the day. The Swan of Twinella. Rachmaninoff, Prelude in C-sharp minor, arranged by Lucien Caillet. The Prelude in G major, arranged by Lucien Caillet, right? That's the guy. And the Prelude in G minor, arranged by Lucien Caillet, all with Ormandy. This is a fun record, too. This is great to hear this stuff. It's so much fun just to hear Ormandy play this stuff. I don't understand people who diss him for doing, shorter works or lighter music just fabulously. I mean, isn't fabulousness just fabulous no matter who does it, no matter what it is that they're doing so fabulously? I personally take issue with the fact that it's more important to do, a Beethoven symphony fabulously than it is to do, the Afternoon of a Faun or in The Sorcerer's Apprentice. I mean, it's nonsense. Greatness is greatness. Great music making is great, and great music is great no matter what kind it is. And that's all we need to know. Let's see. Disc 32. Oh, Prokofiev Sixth. This is, I think, the premiere recording of it, certainly in the West, and it's a really good performance. A really, really, really good performance, especially in that big, long, difficult central movement. Ormandy was wonderful at holding things together through, steady tempi and subtle adjustments of momentum and things. He just does such a good job in making that music sound cogent. And I mean, because it is, and it should sound that way. It often doesn't. CDs 33 and 34. Oh, Die Fledermaus. Okay, this is with the Met Orchestra, and it has a famous cast. The cast is, wait a minute, it's like they're really famous. Yes, super duper famous cast, people. Luba Valic, Lily Pons, Martha Lipton, and Richard Tucker, and Charles Coleman, and other people. And okay. It's not a good Fledermaus. It's cut to ribbons. It's in English. You can't understand Valic and Lily Pons doing their respective horrifying English accents anyway. Are they in their best voice? Probably not. Does Ormandy care? I'm not sure. It's his only opera recording of note. It's not really his only opera recording because he also did a fantastic Bluebeard's Castle in English. So let's not forget that. But this is his mono opera effort. Let's call it a standard work, and it's a historical memento. But is it a great Fledermaus? Of course not. It's a local consumption production. All right, let's see. Beethoven Violin Concerto and Chanson Poème with Francescani. Lovely. Absolutely lovely. Very well-known performances, and they're quite good. I wonder if we're going to get a Francescani box. He did a lot of stuff. He was a wonderful violinist. It would be nice, wouldn't it? Beethoven, Emperor Concerto, Mozart Concerto 20 with Serkin and Philly from the Serkin box. I'm not going to get into this stuff with the soloists. I'm just telling you right now because it's all been discussed. It is easy to find, reviews and things and talking about it elsewhere. I'm much more interested in the stuff that we haven't heard before. So, I apologize if I don't go crazy over that stuff, but those are self-recommending recordings for fans of the soloists, and I'm going to leave it at that. Tchaik 5! Oh, yes, a beautiful Tchaik 5. A really good Tchaik 5. Ormandy's Tchaikovsky was always wonderful, and this is wonderful. It's first class. First class, particularly good slow movement, by the way. Let's see, disc 38. William Schumann, Symphony No. 3, the famous William Schumann Symphony No. 3 in mono. That's really, Ormandy did quite a bit of William Schumann. Now, I happen to feel that William Schumann is a terrible composer. I don't like his music at all. I find it to be formulaic and rather threadbare, and that's me. But the Third Symphony is one of his best. It's the one Bernstein did. It's the one that got recorded the most, and it's a good piece. It's a good piece to listen to, but some of the other ones, oh God, they're so arid. I just can't deal with them. Debussy Iberia, that's an interesting coupling. A beautiful Iberia, wonderfully, again, crystal clarity in terms of the playing. It's really, really nice to hear. The sonics are perfectly listenable, respectable sonics. It's very good. Rachmaninoff Symphony No. 2, an Ormandy specialty. Obviously, it's the cut version. It's a little bit quicker. He got a little slower as time went along. The next one he did, the stereo one, was also cut. Then he did the uncut one on RCA, which was sort of the slowest and dullest of them. He should have kept with the cuts because that's how he knew it, and that's what he loved. And the two cut ones, the stereo and the mono, are both wonderful. They're wonderful, wonderful performances. And so that's great. And then, hang on a momentito, let's see what we have here in disc 40. Okay, disc 40 is none other than our dear friend, the Symphonie Fantastique. And this is a fantastic. Ormandy was a much better Berlioz conductor than he gets credit for being. He did really good Berlioz. He also did a good stereo Fantastique. This one is really in the Charles Munch League. He gets the finale done in under 9 minutes. And if Those of you who know your fantastiques will know if that finale is less than 9 minutes, that it is a smoker. It's going like crazy. It's going insane. And it is insane. It's just fantastic. And remember how I said, actually, it's really rather cool because the cover is the Vertigo cover, which is sort of appropriate, isn't it? Yes, it could be Alfred Hitchcock's Symphony Fantastique. The point about the Fantastique that I made just a little while ago is that everyone hauls out and does it. And it's one of the toughest pieces in the entire repertoire to interpret successfully. And it's to Ormandy's credit that he does. He does a really bang-up job with it, especially that finale. Oh, it's amazing. Just amazing. All right, we're up to 41. Disc 41, what is this? Brahms First. First class Brahms First. An exciting, rousing, tensile, leonine, Sturm und Drangi Brahms First. Beautiful. And then the Tchaikovsky Pathetique, a gorgeous performance of the Pathetique as well. First class in every way. I mean, it really is. Then another Johann Strauss, Edward Strauss disc. You get, Strauss things. And Joseph Strauss, Feuerfest, the Acceleration Waltz, A Night in Venice Overture, Bon Fright, Wein, Women and Gesang, Wine, Women and Song, Kaiser Waltz, the Emperor Waltz, the Perpetuum Mobile musical joke thing. And you also get Beethoven's Coriolan and Egmont overtures. The Coriolan is also very fiery. Very, very fiery. It's really quite special. And he didn't re-record it, I don't think, in stereo. One of the guys one of you out there, one of my dear commentators, is Mr. Fowler, indicated what he did and didn't do later. And I think Coriolan was one of the overtures he didn't remake. I don't think he did anyway. And the Egmont, they're both very exciting. Just take no prisoners, pedal to the metal Beethoven overture performances. And what could be bad with that? Again, as in his Brahms, Ormandy's Beethoven was a lot better than he gets credit for. It really, really was. I am not sure why it's taken so long for people to realize this, or for people to really listen to it. Or maybe everyone just needed a rest. Maybe we were taking him for granted and taking the excellence of his results and the quality of his results for granted. But boy, listening to it again, you go, wow, that's really great. So go figure. Gottschalk, Cakewalk. Great fun. Arranged by Hershey K. It's just delicious. And then Morton Gould's Fall River Legend with the New York Phil under Dimitri Metropolis. A wonderful disc. Great fun and just a wonderful. Oh, and there's more on here, pardon me. There's more. You get Walton's 4 dances from Facade and Bernstein's Fancy Free 3 dance variations with the Philadelphia Pops under Alexander Hillsberg. That's a nice disc of American music by various people, isn't it? It really is. All right, so that's disc 44. Disc 45 is a disc called First Chair. It features soloists of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And you get, Jeremiah Clark's Trumpet Voluntary with Samuel Krauss, the Griffiths Poem with William Kincaid for flute and orchestra, Handel's Concerto for oboe and strings, number 3 in G minor, Handel HWV, who cares, with Marcel Tabuteau, the famous Tabuteau. And Burl Phillips doing the concert piece for bassoon and string orchestra with Saul Schoenbach, the flutist, the bassoonist. Weber's Adagio and Rondo with Lorne Monroe, cellist. Chabrier's Larghetto for horn and orchestra with Mason Jones. Beethoven's Romance with Jacob Krechmalik. And again, Weber's Concertino for clarinet and orchestra with Anthony Gigliotti. So first chairs, and they are wonderful first chair players, as you can hear for yourself. Chopin Concerto number 1. This is all on one disc, 136-minute disc with Georgy Shandor and the Philadelphia Orchestra under Eugene Ormandy. You remember him. Very, very good performance of the Chopin. A beautiful performance, and really, Shandor, one of Shandor's best records, I think. Just first rate all the way through. And the two of them get along really, really well. CD 47. Oh, Sibelius. The Lemminkainen Suite. The Lemminkainen Legends. It's really a symphony. But, oh boy, is this hot. This is so freaking hot. Let me tell you something. When you get this box, when you get this box. There's some things you just want to hear to dispel the notion that Ormandy was not exciting particularly. Put on Lemminkainen's Return. Not only do you get all of Ormandy's reorchestrations, like especially obvious. I mean, you couldn't even hear some of them later on, but there, the tam-tam wax. Oh, it's so crazy. The tam-tam wax that Sibelius didn't write right toward the end, just before the brass come in with bum ba dum ba da ba 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 da 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 ba da. You hear this crash, but bum bum crash, but it's hysterical. And the extra cymbal crashes at the end, but that's not the point. The point is that it's so unbelievably physically exciting. I mean, it just will blow your mind. Put on Lemminkainen's Return. Just do it. What else do we get? Oh, and next, even more exciting, disc 48. You get Haydn's Farewell Symphony and his Symphony number 7, Le Midi. Who does Le Midi? Who did Le Midi at this point? These performances are so beautiful. They are incredible. You're not going to believe. Put on Le Midi and then go find your period instrument version with 3 people playing, and you're just not going to believe the difference. And the slow movement of Le Midi, because it has this minor key throbbing introduction and then this, violin aria, solo violin, the playing is just unbelievable. And it's so passionate and spontaneous. And the farewell, my God, the farewell has such tension. I mean, it's not slow, it's not lazy, it's not rhythmically slushy, it's not sticky, it's just thrilling. I mean, if I had to say, pull out one disc, play it for your friends, ask them who's doing it. Do this one. Do disc 48 with Haydn's Farewell and number 7. It's astonishing. It blew my mind. I had no idea it existed. It's an incredible performance. Great. He was just a great Haydn conductor. I mean, who would have thought of it? Incredible. And then disc 49. Boy, we're on a run. Disc 49 is Jeanne d'Arc au Boucher. Joan of Arc at the Stake by Honegger with Vera Zorina as Joan of Arc. Really, really hot stuff and rare, unusual, wonderfully done. I mean, who else was doing this stuff then? This is a wonderful, wonderful, piece of what you might call unusual repertoire. It's a novelty. That was the word. It's a novelty. Disc 50. Okay, this one we know. This one we really know. It's been reissued several times already. The Liszt Concerto number 1 and the Fantasia on Hungarian folk melodies and the Beethoven Third Piano Concerto, all with Claudio Arrau. Those are classics, just straight out classics, as we all know. So that's wonderful. CD 51, Prokofiev, Symphony number 7, the premiere recording of that. Wow, with Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet. That's the one that poor old Richard Osborne had a nervous breakdown about because Ormandy added some cymbal crashes to the beginning of the fight music. Unlike what Osborne described as Tchaikovsky's own discrete scoring. What an idiot. And then let's see, the 1812 Overture, which is 1812-y, and the Slavonic, the March Slav. Yes, that's also fun. Those are all Ormandy standards, and they are done with great aplomb. Aplomb is the word, but the Prokofiev 7th is beautiful to have. It's a wonderful performance, and it's good to hear it remastered because, it was showed up in Japan in the mono box. It wasn't sounding nearly as good as it does here. It really sounds much better in this remastering. CD 52. More Strauss people. Okay. We know by now the Strauss people. I don't think we need to go into that in any more detail. Okay, 53. Mussorgsky Pictures in an Exhibition and Stravinsky's Firebird Suite. Now, Pictures in an Exhibition was an Ormandy specialty. Here's the case where his stereo version, I think, is better because the stereo version is the reference version of Pictures in an Exhibition. It really is. But this one is awfully good, too. It really is. And the Firebird Suite is very exciting, tremendously exciting, especially the Infernal Dance, which tells you, by the way, that I think that the parts that Ormandy used for this particular piece must have been Stokowski's because he uses the chime, da, 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 bang. on the bangs, you hear this boing. It's a chime there. Stravinsky did not write for a chime there, but Tchaikovsky had a chime. It went clank, do, 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 clank, do, 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 do. And Ormandy has the clank as well, which leads me to believe he's using someone else's parts for that particular performance. I wonder what the reality of it was. I don't know. I really don't know. Then we get Tchaikovsky, the Nutcracker Suite and the Sleeping Beauty Suite. I mean, this was meat and potatoes. Ormandy in Philly. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's gorgeously done. It just sounds terrific. Wagner. Tristan and Isolde, the Prelude, the Liebesnacht, and the Liebestod, which is sort of all done separately, which is interesting. And then Götterdämmerung, Siegfried's Death and Trauermarsch, very, very dramatically done. And Brunhilde's Immolation Scene with Margaret Harshaw, the successor to Helen Traubel at the Met. And, you know, she was a decent Wagnerian soprano. And she sounds fine, and it's, you know, it's fine. But, you know, Ormandy's Wagner is also always worth listening to. It's appropriately sensual and very, very nice. Then we get another Hindemith disc. This is so great. This is disc 56. The Mathis der Mahler Symphony. This is actually Ormandy's second recording of it. And it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. But the real treat, the concert music for strings and brass. Put on the second movement. I'm telling you, here's another one of those cases. You know, no one gets any credit for being great at Hindemith, but Ormandy and Philly were so great at Hindemith. And the second movement of the concert music for strings and brass is unbelievable. It's just, you come back to your cooking metaphors. It's sizzling, it's smoking, it's frying, it's sautéing, it's flambeing. It's unbelievable. It's so exciting. It's just insanely exciting. You can't believe they're doing it at that tempo. And, you know, the idea that, you know, no one gets credit for being great at Hindemith, like I said. And, you know, even if it's wonderful, who collects concert music for strings and brass? But again, it's a masterpiece. It's a 20th century masterpiece. And, you know, Ormandy deserves credit for doing all of this music. Think about it, the Bartók Concerto for Orchestra, this stuff was all like a decade old when he got his hands on it. Okay, the concert music was 1929. The Mathis der Mahler was 1934. But this was new. This was new music. No, it wasn't avant-garde new music. It wasn't atonal new music. I mean, who cares? It was new music. And Ormandy was doing it. He was doing it when it was new and doing it spectacularly. Spectacularly. Just play that second movement of the concert music for strings and brass. It will blow your mind, believe me. Brahms, Symphony No. 2. You ever wonder what wow and flutter meant? Remember when they always talked about recordings? They had wow, they had flutter. Well, I'm not quite sure what wow and flutter are either, but I think I now know after hearing this Brahms 2. It's a very, very good Brahms 2. It's exciting. It's gorgeously played. It's really marvelous, but there's something happening in the string sound on this recording that sort of goes, wow, 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 wow. There's wow. It's a flutter. And I guess it's just the nature of the tapes, not as well preserved as some of the other ones. Rimsky-Korsakov, Capriccio Espagnol, Flight of the Bumblebee, Dance of the Tumblers, Tchaikovsky, Capriccio Italien, Andante Cantabile. Absolutely great. Absolutely nothing not to love. First rate, fun to listen to. Just all you need to know. A Wagner program. Oh, this is a really good Wagner program. You get the Tannhäuser Overture and Venusberg music. Really exciting Venusberg music. You know, not many people did it. Walter did the Venusberg music too. Nowadays, it's hard to find people doing the Venusberg music with the overture, and I don't know why, because it's like 25 minutes of vintage Wagner. It should be done more frequently on these Wagner collections. Then we get the Prelude to Act 3 of Lohengrin, which is just noisy, and the Ride of the Valkyries, which is fun, and the Magic Fire music, which is fun, and 3 excerpts from the Meistersinger. The Prelude to Act 3, Dance of the Apprentices, and Entry of the Masters. Just a really enjoyable Wagner disc. I just loved it. Then we get a Waldteufel disc. Excuse me. Estudiantina, España, the Waltz after Chabrier. Pluie, Rain of Diamonds, Pluie de Diamants, Les Patineurs, Lehar, the Lustige Witwe, das Land des Lächelns, And all this other stuff by Lehar. Okay, yeah, gold and silver and stuff. Yes, plenty of stuff. And it's fun. It's just fun. It's fun to listen to, and I'm happy with that. Perfectly happy with that. Heldenleben. Oh, Ein Heldenleben. This is disc 61. Ein Heldenleben. This is one of the liveliest, most humorous performances of Ein Heldenleben that I've ever heard. It's really, really fun to listen to. It's so lively and well-paced that it doesn't sound boring at the end. And I cannot exaggerate what an achievement that is. It really is exceptionally well done. Scheherazade, the next more modern sounding Scheherazade, which sounds like the other Scheherazade, only better. Just great. Let's see. The Pleasures of Paris. Oh, okay. Gaieté Parisienne. Oh, yeah, this is fun. You get Gaieté Parisienne, and you get Chopin's Les Sylphides, the ballet, arranged by Roy Douglas. This is two albums squished together, and it's just a joy, as you might say, The Pleasures of Paris. What's not to love? I mean, you like Paris, you like pleasure, you're in business. And then we have more Virgil Thomson, with Virgil Thomson conducting some of it. The Three Pictures for Orchestra. Beautiful work. Do you know Virgil Thomson's Three Pictures for Orchestra? You really should. They are The Seine at Night, Wheat Fields at Noon, and Sea Peace with Birds. They are lovely. And Virgil Thomson is the conductor. Then we have Ormandy doing 5 songs from William Blake with Mac Harrell, the extremely fine soloist. And that is a nice record. Is that all that's on there? Yeah, it's a 34-minute disc. Beethoven, Piano Concerto No. 1, Piano Concerto No. 3 with Rudolf Serkin. Classic versions. You know them, you love them, you will still know them, and you will still love them when you're done with this. Disc 66, the Franck D minor, once again, a little bit different, particularly different tempi in the central movements between these two. I can go back and check and tell you what the other one adds. Okay, you'll take my word for it, right? Rachmaninoff Third Symphony and Vocalese, very good Rachmaninoff Third Symphony with a particularly zingy finale. And a piece that really has a weak finale. The more zing you can bring to it, the better off you are. I love this. Oh, this disc is hot. This is hot, 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 hot. Ports of Call. You get Bolero, a quick Bolero, just about 14 minutes. It's a swift Bolero and an absolutely loony La Valse. It gets just 11 minutes long, a little bit. The ending is it's supposed to be an apocalypse. It is apocalyptic. It is unbelievable. They go crazy at the end of La Valse, especially with those fabulous trumpet runs going, crash, makes us wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Then you get Ibert, Escales, and Ravel's Pavane, and Debussy's Clair de Lune. And finally, a blistering, we're back to the cooking metaphors. Well, blistering isn't cooking. We're into surgical and medical metaphors. A blistering Chabrier Espagne. Oh boy, is that one to get your pulse racing. And the Bartók Concerto for Orchestra, a beautiful performance with a very exciting finale. It's swifter than Ormandy's stereo remake. Different. I like the stereo remake very much. It's a very, very beautiful performance, a little more careful. But this is really great. Remember Ormandy's last recording, or one of them, was the digital Bartók Concerto for Orchestra that came with that. It's like green. It was like on green plastic. It was on RCA. It was really slow, and it was kind of sad. This one is really good. It's the second one on Sony CBS is really good. Richard Yardumian. Richard Yardumian was a local Philadelphia composer. He was Armenian. So if you know like Hovannes, you're probably going to like Yardumian because a lot of it has that sort of, romantic nationalist folk type stuff in it. The Armenian Suite, which is really delightful. It's a lovely work. It should be like, Caucasian sketches and that kind of stuff. It's really a nice pops piece. It should be played. And the Desolate City, and then the violin concerto with Anshel Brusilo, the new concertmaster in Philadelphia. It's nice to hear him. And then his Psalm 130, which is also billed as Symphony No. 2, Psalms, for tenor and orchestra. This is all lovely music. Yardumian is one of those composers who does not deserve to disappear into obscurity. It's really enjoyable music, very enjoyable music. Then we get William Schumann Symphony No. 6 in one movement, 27 interminable minutes. I just don't like that piece. and Pistons Fourth, which is a masterpiece and which they played very well. So that's a recording that also was out previously, and here it sounds much better than it did in any of its previous releases. Then we get the Rite of Spring and the Petrushka Suite. I like the Petrushka Suite because it has a loud ending, which is always fun. I like that. It ends with the Masqueraders. And the Rite of Spring, this is a very exciting Rite of Spring. It really is. I mean, Ormandy never got credit for doing these things, and he really whips it up into quite a lather. It'll shock you if you don't know his Rites of Spring. This was released previously, by the way, this Rite of Spring. It was in the Sony or RCA Rite of Spring box or something like that, because I listened to it and reviewed it then, and it really shocked me. It'll shock you too. Then we get the Grieg 2 Pirkin suites and the Bizet 2 L'Arlésienne suites on disc 73. Nothing not to love. Disc 74, Beethoven Piano Concerto number 4, which we heard previously with Kazude, and number 2. And now we have them with Sirkin. And of course, those are classics. And then Sibelius, Symphonies 4 and 5. Great Sibelius 4, really good Sibelius 5. They are wonderful performances. Again, Ormandy was a crack Sibelius conductor. First class, really at a time, in the 50s at this point, there wasn't anybody who was doing Sibelius at this level. Nobody was. Nobody. They're just marvelous performances. Rachmaninoff, The Bells. Well, it's in English, which, is sort of to be expected because the poem originally was in English. It's Edgar Allan Poe, after all. The Bells is a masterpiece, and this is a very, very good performance of it. I know everyone goes, well, Kondrashin. Yes, okay, Kondrashin. This is a very, very good recording of The Bells. It's exciting. It's well sung with, the chorus is, let's see, who is this? Oh, Francis Yeen, soprano, David Lloyd, Mac Harrell, and the Temple University Choir, whose diction is surprisingly clear and very, very good. I was shocked. I could actually understand some of what they're saying. And then you get a really good Isle of the Dead to complete the disc. What's not to love? Tchaikovsky, Symphony number 4. Here it is again. We already talked about Tchaik 4, so we don't need to talk about it again. Then there's more Bach. Here we go. This is the one that has the Fantasia and Fugue in C minor, the Elgar, which is just such a fun, vulgar orchestration, especially the fugue. It's fun to listen to. And let's see, then we got some orchestrations by Ormandy and William R. Smith, including Comme Susur Tot. Oh, yes, give me peace, death. There's a lot of sort of, dark Bach. But you do get the Fantasia and Fugue in G minor, which is nice and noisy, and the Prelude and Fugue in C minor. It's all fine. Okay. 79 is next, right? Yes, disc 79. Vivaldi Concerto for 2 violins and Bach Concerto for violin, strings, and basso continuo with Isaac Stern. The 2 violin concerto is with Stern and Oistrakh. And then you get the Bach 2nd violin concerto with Oistrakh and the Mendelssohn violin concerto with Stern. And those are basically classic versions that everybody knows, and they need no further recommendation from me. Ah, yes, Disc 80, Wagner Parsifal. This is beautiful. By the way, we are now 2/3 through this thing. 2/3. We're doing well, folks. Hang in there. Go get dinner. Take a pause. Go to the bathroom. Get a snack. We're getting there. Parsifal. Just music from Parsifal. It's really good hearing a whole disc of music from Parsifal without having to listen to any singing from Parsifal. I think that's really fun. You get the prelude, obviously, the transformation music from Act 1, and Act 2, Klingsor's Magic Garden, Act 3, the Good Friday music, and then the closing scene. This is all very, very well played with a certain lightness and liveliness that you don't always get in Wagner, and particularly in Parsifal. So I enjoyed this disc. I really did. I thought it was lovely. Then we have, Oistrakh doing Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto and the Mozart 4th Violin Concerto and Paganini's 1st Concerto. That's with Francescatti, not Oistrakh. And those are all very nice to have. Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto number 2 with Eugene Ormandy. I like that performance. It's so good to see Ormandy getting a little play. He was such a wonderful chamber musician, and his solo outings, I think, are all kind of important because he was a very serious, very talented artist. And then we get, Rachmaninoff Prelude in G major and the Prelude in G minor, also played again by Ormandy and Philly. Those are arrangements by Lucien Caillé. Yeah. let's see, disc, are we on disc? I'm on 83. Let me see, 80, 81, 82. Yeah, 83. Okay. Nice thick pages. It's very well printed. Nice paper, which makes me think I'm double turning pages. But I don't think I am. Roy Harris, Symphony Number 7. Well, that's a premiere, and that's nice to have. And the Symphony 1933, Symphony Number 1, performed by the Boston Symphony and Koussevitzky. I mean, that's a great Roy Harris disc if you're looking for some Roy Harris. Then Beethoven's 5th and Mozart's Number 40 in G minor. This is disc 84. Okay, here we go again, right? Ormandy, the guy who couldn't play classical music. Well, the Beethoven is a very, very solid, sober, serious, and heroic reading. It really is. It has weight, it has propulsion, and it has bass lines. And you can hear the bass lines. But the real shocker, as with the Haydn, is the Mozart G minor. Holy cow! They just dig into it and play the daylights out of it. I mean, it just goes to show why these things are classics. They're classics because they're great music, and if you give a great performance of great music with great playing and great conducting, you get greatness. It's plain and simple. This is one of the most exciting Mozart G minors I have ever heard. Again, get the set, take out your Mozart G minor, play it, play the finale with both repeats. Whoa, it's just, you're not going to believe it. You are absolutely not going to believe it. It's amazing. I mean, the finale is longer than the first movement because of the repeats. Who did that? I think that is so cool. I hope it's not a mistake. God forbid it's an editing error. All right, Persichetti, Symphony Number 4, lovely work. And Louis Gesensway, Four Squares of Philadelphia, for narrator and orchestra. I mean, that's a piece for local consumption. It's enjoyable. It is enjoyable, but I hate narrator and orchestra. I just can't stand it. I really can't stand it. I'm sorry, it's me. I mean, I know why they did it, but the Persichetti is the piece to listen to. It really is. Debussy, Afternoon of Fawn. Well, we know that. Davis and Chloe, Suite Number 2. There we go. We know that. And now the Debussy Nocturnes, in this case, all of them, with women's voices of the Philadelphia Orchestra Chorus, which must have existed solely for the purpose of doing CLN. Wow. Beautiful, beautiful performance of the Debussy and the Ravel. It's all good. It's all good. Lalo, Symphony Espagnole. Now the whole thing. Damn. With Isaac Stern and the Bruch Violin Concerto Number 1. They are lovely. They are, violin-y sounding. And Francescatti with the Brahms Violin Concerto now and the Vieux Temps Symphony, Concerto Number 4, which are also lovely recordings and well worth hearing. And I mean, because they're monos, they've been out of print for a long time. And Francescatti, like I said, deserves some serious attention. So it's good to have that stuff back, particularly. The Stern stuff was just, there's a Stern mono disc, there's the Stern stereo disc that's not digital. There's lots of Stern. So, those are known quantities, and they're very good. But I really value the Francescatti titles. I really do, because it's just such a nice thing to be able to hear them. Here's the next New World Symphony, which is, it's marvelous. It's just perfectly wonderful. Ormandy's last New World, or second to last, I think he did it for RCA, so maybe not. Oh, no, he didn't do it for RCA, did he? Well, yeah, he did. But the next one he did was the one with the London Symphony, his only major CBS stereo non-Philadelphia recording, and that is fabulous. It's one of the great New Worlds, hands down. So, no matter where you are with the New World Symphony, with Ormandy, you're in good shape. There's no question about that. Brahms, Piano Concerto Number 2, with Serkin again. CD 90, yay! We're 3/4 to the end. And like all of Serkin's Brahms concertos, it's very, very good. He did he did 2 of these in mono, and then there were the 2 stereo ones. There was another Ormandy, and then there was the Zell. So, God knows, you have Brahms' second piano concertos with Serkin to choose from. Boy, do we ever. And then we have Virtuosi di Philadelphia, doing all kinds of stuff. Paganini, Moto Perpetuo, Gabrielli's Sonata Piano Forte, Darius Milhaud, the Concerto for Percussion and Small Orchestra. Yay! I think that's rather interesting. The Strauss Serenade in E-flat for 13 wind instruments. And the Brahms Serenade number 2, just the last 2 movements, and Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance number 1. All right, that's a strange collection, but it's kind of interesting after all, and it showcases the orchestra, and they deserve to be showcased. Oh, disc 92. This is one of the biggies. This is the complete Albéniz Iberia, with the orchestrations by Arbos and Carlos Surinach. Nobody did it before. This was new, the Surinach arrangements. Now, since then, there have been a couple, but this is a classic, an Ormandy classic. His tempos are surprisingly quick, quite fleet, and the orchestrations, I think, are really very good for the most part. I mean, the Surinach parts that Arbos didn't do are very, very enjoyable, and you get the whole thing. It's 70 minutes long, which means that the tempos are really, really quick, but it's all there. And this was just one of those, it was a totally unique album, and it was really exciting. I mean, this is one of the ones that I heard that people were pirating and sending around. I have a pirate of this somewhere on like a CD-ROM because you couldn't get it anywhere else. It's a classic. It's a legendary cult Ormandy disc. And now we have it in great remastered sound. That was very, very exciting. Disc 93, Khachaturian, Guyana, whatever her name is, and Kovalevsky's The Comedians. I love The Comedians. I really did the whole thing. Not just the gallop. It's so much fun, and the Guyana stuff is it's the guy with the sword doing a saber thing, and it sounds sharp. Yes. Oh, this is great too. CD 94, Appalachian Spring and Billy the Kid, Copeland. Now, one of you asked me something. You said that Ormandy very especially did the complete Appalachian Spring Ballet, not the suite. Is that the one that's in here? The answer is yes! It's the complete Appalachian Spring. All of it. Yay! Not the suite, along with the Billy the Kid suite. And wonderful, wonderful performances. And again, this was new music when Ormandy did it. It was new, folks. I know people will say, God, it's Appalachian Spring. You heard it a billion times. Yeah, but it had to be new once. And this was when it was new. And you get the whole ballet, which is really very, very important recording. Then we get another Strauss disc. Oh, dear. Fledermaus Suite, 1001 Nights, Sphärenklange, Schwarz on Lyre, and Kaiser Waltz, and then from the beautiful Blue Danube, and Roses from the South. And we know the Strauss stuff by now. Schumann, Piano Concerto, and the Strauss Burlesque with Rudolf Serkin. They're great. I mean, they're just great. We know they're great. Another Richard Strauss disc. Rosenkavalier Waltzes, Don Juan. Very exciting. Really good Don Juan. And a really good Till Eulenspiegel as well. And then the love scene from Fire Snot. Well, it's really called Feuer's Note. But I prefer to call it Fire Snot. It's a great love scene. It's Strauss's first major effort to depict a sexual climax in music, and he was always very, very good at it. I mean, depicting it in music. I mean, how good at it he was otherwise, you'd have to ask Mrs. Strauss. But yes, that's a very unusual item to have it. It's wonderful to have it. It's wonderfully played. Okay, William Schumann, Credendum, Article of Faith. I actually like Credendum. I think that's one of William Schumann's best pieces. I think he was in much better shape when he was not writing symphonies, because he didn't get all like anal retentive about it. And so that's with Ormandy and Philly. But you also get Leon Kirchner's first piano concerto with Leon Kirchner and Metropolis, which is a very, very important addition to the contemporary music discography. And that was around, also licensed in various ways. But it's good to have it here. And again, the sound is better than it's ever been. We need a Metropolis box. We really do. Sony. So much you can do, Sony. You can keep yourself doing this forever. We really need a Metropolis box. Okay, Tchaikovsky, Serenade for Strings, Borodin Nocturno, Barber Adagio, and Vaughan Williams, Fantasia on Greensleeves. Need I say more? Come on, you know it's going to be great. CD 100. Glier, Ilya Muromets, Symphony No. 3, cut to ribbons and played to a fare thee well. I have no problem with the cuts. Ormandy cut it in his later one. Tchaikovsky cut it in his previous versions. Some people try to do the complete one. Frankly, I don't care. I don't care at all. I mean, yeah, it sounds good complete. It sounds just as good cut. And boy, when it's played like this, it sounds even better. It's wonderful. Tchaikovsky, a disc of Swan Lake stuff, which sounds very Tchaikovsky and Swan Lakey. It's beautifully done. Let's see, Rossini overtures. Well, these are generally overtures. William Tell, Orpheus in the Underworld, The Bartered Bride, Mignon, Die Schöne Galité, Light Cavalry, and the Roman Carnival. Now, some of these are Alexander Hilsberg, and the rest of them, the ones from, let's see, Hilsberg does everything from, he does Light Cavalry and Roman Carnival. All the rest of it is Ormandy. And they're just nice, exciting overture performances. But, you know, we don't have to go into it in any detail. Wieniawski, Violin Concerto No. 2. Camille Saint-Saëns, Introduction, Rondo Capriccioso. Ravel, Tzigana. Ugh. With Isaac Stern. I hate Tzigana. I know I keep saying that every time I come across it. I just think it's the worst piece Ravel ever wrote. Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony with E. Power Biggs and the Philadelphia Orchestra with Ormandy. Recorded in 1957, and it's terrific, and it sounds really good. And the reason it sounds really good is because they did it in Symphony Hall in Boston, where they had a real organ. That was a smart move. Ormandy always did a great Saint-Saëns 3. It was one of his signature pieces, and his Sony version, the stereo one, is unquestionably one of the reference recordings of the symphony. Schubert 8, the unfinished, and some Midsummer Night's Dream stuff. Very, very beautifully done. First-class performances. No exposition repeat in the Schubert. Nice flowing tempos, though. Especially the second movement, the Andante of the Schubert, has just this. It's very quick by contemporary standards, and I love it. I just love the way it sounds, the way Ormandy does it. It just glides along. I had this recording actually when I was a little kid. It was part of my mother's record collection. So thanks, Mom. Let's see, Glière, Russian Sailor's Dance, Smetana, The Bartered Bride, Polka, Furya, and Dance of the Comedians, Brahms, Hungarian Dances, numbers 5, 6, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and Khachaturian's Saber Dance. Guess what? It's a disc of dances. Yes, and they're very dance-like. Ooh, look at this. This is hot. This is a 72-minute CD. This is good stuff. Sibelius Tone Poems. You get Ansaga, very swift and exciting. Ansaga. Pohjola's Daughter, another smoker of a tone poem. The Oceanides, Tapiola. And then the Alphen Swedish Rhapsody No. 1. And Grieg from Peer Gynt. You get Anitra's Dancing in the Hall of the Mountain King, which at that point, who cares? But those are really good performances. And again, Ormandy was in his element in Sibelius. I mean, just wonderful to have all this Sibelius stuff. Enescu, Romanian Rhapsodies 1 and 2, first class. The first Romanian Rhapsody has got to be, the best one after Silvestri's. It's really marvelous. And the mono, Romanian Rhapsody sweepstakes. It's very, very good. Dvorak Carnival, exciting. Really blazing coda. It's really great. And Francesca de Rimini. Okay, I want more tam-tam at the end, but it's a very, very exciting Francesca. Ormandy just know how to do this stuff. It's funny, when you listen to so many recordings today of people who play this music and they just blow it. They just do horribly. They don't seem to know what they're doing. They don't know how to play loudly. They don't know how to play excitingly. They don't know how to pace any of this stuff. And you listen to Ormandy after all these years, good old Eugene Ormandy, who we all took for granted, and we realize he really knew what he was doing. Yes, I got to sit up now. I'm starting to slouch, because we're there. 109. Here's Francescatti again. Sarasate Zigeunerweise, the Saint-Saëns Havanaise, Introduction to Rondo Capriccioso, Chansons, Poème. All right. Let's see. William Smith is the conductor of the Columbia Symphony in the Sarasate and Saint-Saëns Havanaise, and Ormandy does the rest. And it's Francescatti. I've already said I like Francescatti. What more do you need? The Moldau, very exciting Moldau, Vltava. And then, let's see, Ormandy's, again, Invitation to the Dance, and Liszt Mephisto Waltz No. 1, a really exciting Mephisto Waltz No. 1, and some Berlioz, Damnation of Faust things, the Minuet des Follets, the Ballet des Sylphes, and the Hungarian March to round out the collection. And as I said, Ormandy is a really good Berlioz conductor. It's just so sad that his Berlioz is so underrated. Remember, he did the Requiem, and he did a really good Harold in Italy. He did. Oh, Norman Dello Gioia, the variation Chaconne and Finale. That's a major work and a good one, and they play the crap out of it. It's really fun. And John Vincent's Symphony in D, subtitle, pardon me for sniffling. Pardon me, it's just allergy season, you know. It's a festive piece in one movement, and it's festive, and it's in one movement, and it's nice to hear. Okay, Prokofiev, Classical Symphony. Again, another one. Fabulously performed, as usual in that music. And another Weinberger Schwanda der Dudelsach, Pfeiffer, Swan to the Bagpiper, and a really first-class, absolutely first-class Bizet Symphony in C. A piece that, again, that a great orchestra in Ormandy, they just did. We're beginning to get a picture here of a guy who did classical and classicizing music really, really well. And that is maybe the big surprise of this box. Just, first of all, how good Ormandy was at doing it. And second of all, how maybe our view of what is appropriate for that repertoire has just not been correct. Because it sounds wonderful the way they do it. It really does. I don't know what to tell you. Oh, here's a first class. We're on disc 113, Strauss Don Quixote with Lorne Monroe, cellist. And it's really, really well done. Beautiful and full of character in each variation. I really, really enjoyed that. And I'm not the biggest Don Quixote fan in the world. And then we get Haydn 99 and 100, the military. And boy, do they make a racket in the military. In 99, if you listen to the finales, like comparatively, Bernstein is more exciting than Ormandy there, but it's a very, very good 99. And that military, the military is just amazing. They really blast through it, even with the the old style percussion parts, where there are fewer cymbal crashes, and when they come back in the finale, as if we care. It really just listen to them. Listen to the way Ormandy handles the minuets. They're lively and snappy and dance-like. There's none of that slow motion, droopy, modern, what we considered to be that modern romantic boring version of classical repertoire. I mean, Ormandy isn't anything like that in this music. It just blows my mind. I've been fixated on these performances for the past couple of weeks. Okay, the Beethoven Emperor with Eugene Ormandy. So nice to have again. Ormandy was so much fun. Just a terrific guy. Then we get, this is a nice, more Strauss. The Rosenkavalier Concert Suite in better sound than the last time we had the Rosenkavalier Concert Suite. And this is really cool. The Frauenauschatten Symphonic Synthesis, the Symphonic Fantasia that Strauss wrote. Now, the Symphonic Fantasia that Strauss wrote is the worst opera arrangement of his own works that he ever made. It contains all the dullest music from the opera. And it is to Ormandy's credit that they do an absolutely splendid job with it. You're much better hearing Erich Leinsdorf's version, because he includes some of the exciting music. But Ormandy and the orchestra, they do a wonderful job with this. It's a shocker. And then there's a whole disc of Victor Herbert, which is first class in every way. You get Pan America, his morceau characteristique, the American Fantasy, based on patriotic songs and melodies, Hail Columbia, Swanee River, Dixie, Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean, and the Star-Spangled Banner, the Irish Rhapsody, which is lovely, and then Naughty Marietta, Selections, and the Fortune Teller, Selections. Wonderful disc. Herbert is a really, really fine composer. We still know way, way, way too little about him. All of his manuscripts, I actually researched this, are tucked away in the Library of Congress. And it will be the labor of generations to try and make sense of them, because he didn't have, he had conducting scores were what was published, and violin scores and vocal scores. But the actual manuscript with his own orchestrations and stuff, it's all sitting somewhere. And it's worth looking at, because Herbert was a vibrato guy, a serious vibrato. He actually indicated where to put it, where not to put it. He said you could learn a lot about performance practice looking at Herbert's scores. The ones I've seen have been most educational. Trust me at that, when I was doing my own research. So it's great to have Victor Herbert. And then we get Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony with Bruno Walter, along with the Schubert Unfinished, all with Bruno Walter. It's really quite cool to have here. It's fascinating to compare Walter to Ormandy in the second movement of the Unfinished, where Ormandy is considerably swifter. than Bruno Walter. But this is really a nice thing to have because it's just Philly, but with Bruno Walter and not Ormandy. That's a wonderful treat, I think. And that Pastoral Symphony is, it's one of the reference recordings of the Pastoral Symphony. It's to die for. It's fantastic. Okay, 119. We have, this is let's see, Jerome Kern, a Showboat, South Pacific with Richard Rodgers and Slaughter on 10th Avenue, Bits with Andre Kostelanetz in Philly. Then we get Lord Berners, The Triumph of Neptune, and the Semiramide Overture with Beecham conducting. Isn't that a treat? It's wonderful to have. If you don't know The Triumph of Neptune, you should hear it. It's a hoot. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece. And then finally, CD 120. Now, CD 120 is a disc called Symphony in Brief. It's excerpts. It's just extracts of things, much of which was all done by the Columbia Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Charles O'Connell. And the Columbia Symphony Orchestra being members of the Philadelphia Orchestra in this case. And you get like bits of movements. And the bits of movements that you get are from Mozart's 40th Symphony, Beethoven's Eroica, Mendelssohn's Scottish, Brahms' First, Scheherazade, Sibelius II, Franck's D minor, and Tchaikovsky 4. They're just pieces of pieces, but they're complete. I mean, they did it for completeness, and you can only thank them for being so careful and doing it for completeness. And that was disc 120, which means that's the whole box. We talked about the whole box. I have had to have spent something like several days of time listening to a lot of this stuff, and it has been an enormous pleasure, a real voyage of discovery. You know, when I just did the Previn box, I knew most of those recordings already, so rehearing some of them, the things that were never released in this country and some of the other stuff, it was easy. This was almost, well, aside from the concertos, which we already knew, and these pirate things, I mean, a good, 40 or 50 discs out of this 120 were completely new to me. And maybe more, maybe 60 discs, maybe half of it. And boy, has it been fun going through this stuff and just letting it speak for itself, letting it fall onto my consciousness, onto my ears, and really realize that Ormandy was so much more than we give him credit for being. And I think that will be equally true when we begin to see the stereo stuff taken as a whole, where we can really look at what he did and how he did it, because there's a lot of very interesting repertoire there too that nobody was doing. Really, really interesting repertoire. I mean, he was doing Nielsen's Sixth. He was doing all kinds of stuff. Later on, his Mahler is in there, his Shostakovich is in there. Just fantastic stuff. And so I was thrilled to be able to come in when he had just started making his reputation and to hear this fabulously put together set. And I thank Sony very much for doing it, for taking the time. I can only recommend it to you as strongly as possible if, and this is if you want to listen to it. If you're really serious about listening to it, this does not belong on your coffee table. It does not belong on your shelf. It belongs in your CD player and in your head, in your brain, so you can get a real sense of this very, very interesting and important slice of discographic history and form your own view of what Ormandy and Philadelphia were all about. Because what they were about was great music making. And the number of hits in this box is so much greater than the number of misses that I think you can only come away with the idea that these were great musicians making great music, and Ormandy was the greatest of the bunch. That's how it sounds to me now, folks. So thank you for joining me. Keep on listening. And we did it. We got through it together. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate your persistence in making it to the end. Take care.